This video is going to be what you are going to watch in place of reading any of the slides in your lesson. Okay, so this is for semester B, unit 2, lesson 5. Okay, so I'm just going to repeat that real quick. You do not need to read any of the slides in this lesson. Okay, you will watch this video, you will fill out the guided notes while you're watching it, and then you will skip through to the quick check at the end and take that on the very last slide. Okay, so that's all you have to do for this lesson. This is going to be a quick overview of the Ohio Constitution. For a deeper dive into the Ohio Constitution with a little bit more context, examples, please come to live lesson. Okay, this is going to be a quick run through. Little bit of vocabulary. Okay, so the term General Assembly is what we call the legislative branch in Ohio. Okay, so it's really important to remember that we do not ever call the legislature in Ohio Congress. Okay, Congress is something that is in Washington, D.C. Okay, that is at the federal level. All right. The Ohio General Assembly is the what we call collectively together the Ohio House of Representatives and the Ohio Senate. Okay, they are called the General Assembly, and you will hear me call them the General Assembly. Sometimes you will see me abbreviate it as the Ohio GA. Okay, so just don't ever call it Ohio's Congress because that is not the right term. Okay, so that is the Ohio General Assembly. The other term is governor. Okay, so the governor of Ohio is the head of the Ohio executive branch. Okay, so they are like the version of the president at the federal level, but in Ohio and in every other state, we call them the governor. Okay, the current governor of Ohio is Mike DeWine. All right, next up. Next up, we are going to be talking about the specific Ohio constitutions. We've actually had two constitutions. You could actually call it three. It's a little bit, some people consider us having three, some people consider us having two. It's a little bit complicated. But the first one was written and passed in 1803, which was the founding of Ohio. Okay. Now, this Constitution was super vague and very weak. Okay. Basically, we'll talk much more specifically about why it was weak if you come to class, and I highly recommend that you do because you will need to know that information for the end of course test you're going to take in April. Okay. But the highlights is that it didn't give much power to the executive branch and it caused a lot of problems because there was just not enough power to enforce the laws in Ohio. So in 1851, about 50 years later, a new constitution is written. Okay. Now, this one was stronger, but still not quite to what we know Ohio's government to be today. Okay, so then in 1912, instead of writing a new constitution, they wrote a ton of amendments that modified the constitution completely, almost making it new. So that is why sometimes we say we've had three constitutions, sometimes we say two, because we still technically have that 1851 Constitution, but it was modified so much. So remember, it was changed so much in 1912, it's almost like it was a different Constitution. Okay. And Ohio's Constitution, our current one, has been amended 173 times. Okay. And you may be asking yourself, wow, that seems like a lot of times. Because remember, the United States Constitution has only been amended 27 times. Okay. So obviously, 173 is a lot more than 27. Okay. So why is it that Ohio's Constitution has been amended so many more times than the US? Well, the reason for that is that voters can change the Constitution in Ohio by a simple majority. Okay, so this actually just happened a few months ago. There was a amendment on the ballot to protect abortion access in the state of Ohio, and so then it went out to voters, and voters decided that they passed it. So now it is part of the Ohio Constitution. Okay. So that whole change just took place over the course of a year. So it's actually quite easy to change the Ohio Constitution. And that is why it has changed so many more times. The Ohio Constitution can also be changed in the same way that the U.S. Constitution is changed, in that the Ohio legislature can do it. They have to have a certain amount of votes, but voters can also do it. So there's actually, not only is it easier to change the Ohio Constitution, there's also more ways to change the Ohio Constitution. So Ohio, just a quick little overview of what's in the Ohio Constitution. It has 19 articles and well over 100 sections. Okay, so if we want to compare that to the U.S. Constitution again, the U.S. Constitution has only 7 articles and only 20 sections. Okay, so 19 articles with well over 100 sections. The rundown here is that the Ohio Constitution is much, much longer and more detailed than the United States Constitution. Okay. And the reason why it is longer and more detailed is that state governments in general have more power over our day to day lives, and they have to regulate and create laws over lots and lots of different types of things that the federal Constitution just doesn't do. Things like marriage laws, education, agriculture. Okay, those are the types of things that are in state constitutions, and that is why Ohio's constitution specifically is much, much longer than the United States Constitution. So, some highlights from the Ohio Bill of Rights. So, Ohio's Constitution also has a Bill of Rights in it, just like the U.S. Constitution has. However, the U.S. Constitution, their Bill of Rights comes at the end of the document, okay? Because the Constitution was written first, then they added those first 10 amendments to enshrine those rights that we all love so much. And they were added later because of the Anti-Federalists, remember, thought that the Constitution at that point wasn't protecting rights enough. So that was added later as a compromise, and then we get the Bill of Rights. But remember, the Ohio Constitution is written after the United States Constitution, so therefore they started off with a Bill of Rights in Ohio because they thought that was so important. Okay, now there's actually a lot more rights in Ohio's Bill of Rights than what we see in the U.S. Constitution, and some examples of those are habeas corpus, which just means that you have to, habeas corpus actually means to produce the body. If I remember correctly, that it's roughly translated to that in Latin, which just basically means it's a legal term where you can't hold someone in jail forever without charging them, essentially. Okay, it's slightly more complicated than that. No imprisonment for debt. So if you're in a bunch of debt, you can't be thrown in prison for that. It enshrines victims' rights. It talks about eminent domain, which, remember, eminent domain is the government taking your property and paying you for it to use it for something for the public good. It mentions wrongful death damages in civil court. Okay, so remember, civil court is you're suing someone. You didn't violate a law. The one of the more recent things in the Ohio Bill of Rights is the right to choose your own health care, and recently added in 2023, the right to protect access to abortion. Okay. Now, some more highlights of Ohio's Constitution. That the first part was just the Bill of Rights. The second little highlight here is just talking about what else is in the Ohio Constitution. So we have Articles 2, 3, and 4 establish the 3 branches. Remember, in the U.S. Constitution, Articles 1, 2, and 3 are setting up the different branches. Here, it's 2, 3, and 4. Okay. And so each of those articles are going to give details about how each of those branches are run and the names of things. We will have another video later about each of those branches in Ohio and how they function. Article 6 has 6 sections, sections that detail the education system. Okay, so remember, the federal government doesn't really deal with education law. They have a few, but for the most part, this is given to the states. So, Ohio's constitution deals with education a lot, how the schools are set up, how they get money, how teachers are paid, what kinds of things the teachers can teach and what they can't teach. These are all things that are in the Ohio Constitution. Article 14 is in regards to Ohio livestock. Probably not every state in the country talks about livestock in their Ohio Constitution, but Ohio was definitely started as a farming state. Okay. Article 15 is just entitled miscellaneous, right? You always got to have a miscellaneous spot where you put everything that you don't know where it goes. Okay. So some of these topics in Article 15 are things to do as marriage laws, how the lottery is run, and who is eligible to run for office in Ohio. Okay. So this video came in at just a little bit over 10 minutes. I apologize. I know I said in the last one I would try and keep them under 10. But remember, you don't have to read anything in the lesson now, okay? So you still should get done with this lesson earlier than you normally would. So you're welcome for that. I hope to see you all in class on Tuesday and Thursday in my live lesson room from 1 to 2 p.m., okay? Because then you can come and ask questions and get some more examples and kind of understand this a little better.